Greetings, viewers, and I want to say welcome to another YouTube class. I'm happy that you are part of this journey, and the journey is to unravel the mysteries of biology and parasitology. Some of these things that some of the concepts that sound difficult, we've been trying to demystify them to make them simpler so that even a baby or a beginner will be able to understand and grasp the full concepts in biology and in parasitology. So today we want to talk about another organism that is called the Bryophyta. The Bryophyta. And this organism, if you can remember what I said about the groups of plants, I said we have 5 different groups of plants. The first group that I mentioned was Schizophyta, and the second group that I mentioned was Talophyta, where we discuss algae and fungi. We want to study the third group today, and that third group is called the Bryophyta. The Bryophyta. After Bryophyta, of course, you now have your pteridophyta and spermatophyta. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me on this journey as we dissect this organism, the concepts in this organism called Bryophyta. Somebody may ask, is this not a plant? Why are we calling this organism? It's still an organism. Anything that possesses the characteristics of life can still be categorized as a living organism. So both plants and animals are living organisms. So Bryophyta. Now let me start by talking about the position of Bryophyta. When you look at the groups of plants that I mentioned, you discover that Bryophyta occupies an intermediate position between higher algae and lower pteridophytes They occupy an intermediate position between the higher algae and lower pteridophytes. So you discover that after Schizophyta, Talophyta, you now have Bryophyta at the middle before you talk about Pteridophyta and Spermatophyta. And that is why I made this statement by saying that they occupy an intermediate position between higher algae and lower pteridophytes or Pteridophyta. Of course, there's a difference between Pteridophyta and Pteridophyte. Pteridophyta can talk about, means the division of this group of plants. Then the organisms that fall under this division of plants called Pteridophyta can now be called pteridophytes. Pteridophytes. Okay. Another thing we should also understand before I go into the characteristics. These are the characteristics. Where's my marker? These are the characteristics of this group of plants. So before we go into the characteristics, let's also say one or two things, especially with respect to the origin of Bryophyta. In terms of origin, scientists have struggled to correctly and accurately pinpoint the origin of Bryophyta. And while some school of thought are the view that Bryophyta originated from Pteridophyta before they now followed a separate line of evolution, some scientists, and I think this one is most popular, are of the view that Bryophyta originated from an algal stock. Algae from an algae stock that is called Eulothricales. If you can remember vividly, Eulothricales. Eulothricales. So if you can remember vividly, when we talked about the different divisions of algae, we talked about the first division, the chlorophyta. Don't forget others. The euglenophyta, basilarophyta, the chrysophyta, then the firefighter and rhodophyta. So these are the divisions of plants, sorry, of algae. Now, we talked about the chlorophyta that has about three classes: the chlorophyceae, the prasinophyceae, and the charophyceae. Then we now say that under chlorophyceae that there are many others, which are mentioned: the ovules, the odogoneles, the caulopeles, the chlorococcales, the chlamydomonadales, the eulothricales. I'm trying to tell you where these electric came from, where it originated from. So it came from one of the orders under the division Chlorophyta and under the class Chlorophyceae when it comes to the classification of algae. So this is where scientists feel that Bryophyta originated from this algae stock that is called the Eulothricales. Then it's also important to know that uh, Bryophyta is more advanced than algae and less advanced than pteridophyta. And I will tell you why. Bryophyta is said to be less advanced than algae because of the possession of sex organs, the archegonium and antheridium. The archegonium and antheridium. Archegonium and antheridium. So the possession of these sex organs make Bryophyta to be advanced, to be more advanced than algae, which of course is more primitive. Apart from the fact that, okay, this archegonium is known as a female sex organ, then the antheridium is known as the male sex organ. This antheridium produces the antherozoid, which of course we'll look at when we come to the life cycle, and archegonium produces the egg. Okay, having known this now, we talk about the we'll talk about the uh, another reason why Bryophyta is said to be more advanced. A minute. Okay, it's clear. So another reason why Bryophyta is said to be more advanced than algae. Another reason is because of the concept of metagenesis, alternation of generation. So this occurs in Bryophyta, but does not occur in algae. So these two reasons make Bryophyta to be more advanced than algae. Then, when it comes to a pteridophyta, are there reasons or is there a reason why pteridophyta is said to be more advanced than Bryophyta? And there is. And that reason is a simple one because of the presence of vascular bundle in pteridophyta, which is absent in Bryophyta. I want to talk about the vascular bundle. I'm talking about the xylem and the phloem. The xylem, which of course helps in the absorption of water and nutrient from the soil, and not just the absorption of water and nutrient from the soil, but the transport of this water and nutrient within the plant, and the phloem that now helps in the transport of food. A minute. So That is what we are talking about when it comes to the reason why pteridophyta is said to be more advanced than bryophyta is because of the presence of vascular bundle. And that is why in some textbooks in biology, you discover that from schistophyta to bryophyta are categorized as lower plants. And the reason is because they do not have vascular bundle. Then pteridophyta and spermatophyta are now classified as higher plant because of the presence of vascular bundle. So having said all this, it is now important we now talk about the characteristics of bryophyta. And I've mentioned some of these things in the course of this introduction that I've done. So, but let's go through them again. The first one is non-vascular. Pteridophyta, bryophyta are said to be non-vascular. We are discussing bryophyta now. I don't want to make the mistake of placing Bryophyta in place of pteridophyta. So, in case I made a mistake, please take note. What we're discussing is Bryophyta. So, the first characteristic is the fact that they are non-vascular. And I've explained that Bryophyta do not have vascular bundles or vascular tissues, which of course are present in pteridophyta and in spermatophyta. Then another characteristic is the fact that they are in small size. They are in small size. Truly, the main plant or the bryophyta is not microscopic. That means it's macroscopic. It's something you can see with your naked eyes, but then they are not as big as the main land plants like spermatophyta and pteridophyta. They are very, very small. And of course, the main body of the plant is the gametophyte, which is seen. The sporophyte, however, the sporophytic stage, however, is microscopic and may not be seen with the naked eyes. Then, number three, no true root, stem, and leaves. If you can remember vividly, when we talked about algae and fungi, we discussed or talked about the fact that because they are grouped under Talophyta, they have talus-like body, their body cannot be differentiated into stem, root, and leaf. But coming to Bryophyta, is still true or is still correct to say that their body, that they do not have uh, root, stem, and leaf, but there is something that is added here now, which was not added in the case of algae. So they do not have no true root, stem, and leaf. No true. That means that they have something resembling it. They have something resembling the root, which in this case is called the rhizoid. They have something resembling the root, and that thing that is resembling the root is what they call the rhizoid or the rhizoid. So this helps the plant in absorption of nutrients from the soil, not in absorption of nutrients from the gametophyte. Because as the embryo grows, it also possesses another root-like structure which absorbs nutrients from the gametophyte, and that one is called foot. So foot is different from the rhizoid. So the second one is a stem. They have what you can call axis, not pure stem. And of course, they also do not have leaves. They also do not have true leaves, but they have structures resembling it. So at least in algae and in fungi, there is no part that looks like a leaf at all. There is no part that looks like a root. There is no part that looks like a stem. But when it comes to pteridophyta, even though they are not categorically called root, stem, and leaf, but at least they have structures resembling it. Then the fourth one is the fact that they undergo metagenesis. Metagenesis is alternation of generation. Alternation of generation is what we call metagenesis, and they usually alternate between the gametophyte and the sporophyte. We'll still look at that when we get to reproduction in Bryophyta. And this metagenesis can also be called diplohaplontic life cycle. Diplohaplontic life cycle. We have three different types of life cycles. We have the diplontic life cycle, we have haplontic life cycle, and we now have diplohaplontic life cycle. So this alternates between the diploid stage and the haploid stage. And in this case, the diploid stage is the sporophytic stage, then the gametophyte stage is the haploid phase. The gametophyte stage has n number of chromosomes, then the diploid phase has 2n number of chromosomes. Water is required for fertilization, number 5. This is important. This is an essential requirement when it comes to reproduction in Bryophyta. Without dew or water, there is no reproduction that can occur, because water helps in achieving fertilization in plants. The sperm, gets into the chegonium, and the pterozoite, gets into the chegonium and fertilize the egg through the help of water. And also in mucilage, we'll still come to that. The gametophyte is dominant. And this is another difference between that I omitted. Another difference between Bryophyta and pteridophyta. In the case of pteridophyta, the gametophyte is dependent on the sporophyte, but the reverse becomes the case in Bryophyta. In Bryophyta, the sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte. The sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte. But in pteridophyta, the gametophyte is dependent on the sporophyte. So in this case, that is in pteridophyta now, the sporophyte is dominant, while the sporophyte is dominant, while the gametophyte is not dominant. So in this case now, but in the case of Bryophyta, the gametophyte is the dominant one. Is the one that is conspicuous, the one that is apparent, the one that can be seen. So the seventh characteristic is presence of achegonia and pteridia. I think I've also mentioned this. In Bryophyta, they have sex organs, and these sex organs are called achegonia plural, achegonium singular, then antheridium singular, antheridia plural. These are found in pteridophyta. This is the male sex organ. This is the female sex organ. This produces the egg. This produces the anterozoid, which is also called a sperm. Anterozoid. Anterozoid. Then the next one is moist environments. Why some live in dry places like surfaces of rock, majority or most members of Bryophyta live in moist environments. Moist environments. They live in places that are in environments that are wet or moist, as the case may be. But we'll still have some that stay on the surfaces of rock, where they exert disintegrative or where they help in disintegration of the rock, and this of course results to soil formation. We'll still look at that when we get to the importance of Bryophyta. Okay, I think that is all about the characteristics of pteridophyta. So now I'm going to the importance, the uses of pteridophyta. The importance of pteridophyta. We're going to mention some of them. We'll mention some of them. So, pteridophyta Importance. Sorry, did I say pteridophyta? Sorry, I meant bryophyta. I've told you this thing before. Don't don't be confused. What we are discussing is bryophyta. Sorry that I mentioned pteridophyta. No, sometimes these two words can confuse. So we are talking about bryophyta. That's what we are discussing. I know I mentioned pteridophyta, but it just to give a comparison, just to compare between the two. That these are cases where I've mentioned pteridophyta. Okay, so the first one is that they serve as food for herbivores. Herbivores. So because they are plants, of course, herbivores, these are animals that feed on plant materials. So they serve as food for herbivores. Then the mats of Bryophyta. If you see Bryophyta arranged on the ground, they form what is referred to as mat. So that mat reduces the the pressure or the force of floating water. And I mean, when this is done on an agricultural farm, so once it reduces the pressure at which rain, at which uh, uh, at which water goes through that agricultural farm, then we can now say that it helps to reduce soil erosion. Hmm? It helps to reduce soil erosion because as it wedges that barrier against that water, then of course it reduces the rate at which erosion will occur on that land. So that is what we mean uh, by the fact that the math of Bryophyta helps in checking soil erosion or reducing soil erosion. Soil erosion helps in reducing. Of course, it cannot completely stop soil erosion, and that's why the word reduce or reducing is introduced here because it's not too huge or large enough. I mean, the size of this plant to completely stop soil erosion. Then, in some climes, Bryophyta can be used as substitute for cotton in surgical bandage. Mm? Can be used as substitute. Some people use it as substitute for cotton in surgical bandage, even though it's not common, but it's used. Then it is also important that you know that Bryophyta is used in packing of fragile objects. They're used in packing of fragile objects. They can also serve as mats for domesticated animals. Domesticated animals. If you look at where people have domesticated animals, underneath the ground, no, not underneath, on the ground, they pour in some of these Bryophyta. They have a way they refine the Bryophyta, then pour it on the ground. Then those animals will now use the Bryophyta poured on the ground as a bed or as a bedding material, as their mat. So it can serve as mat for domesticated animal. Then what again? What again? Then I also talked about the fact that Bryophyta can help uh, can help in soil formation due to their disintegrative action on rocks. So if Bryophyta is growing on this rock, after a while it causes a kind of disintegration of as a root, as a root. Sorry, not the root. Doesn't have a root. As a rhizoid or the root-like structure is going down the rock, then it's disintegrating the rock or exerting a disintegrative action on the rock, and as the rock disintegrates, then those little particles of the rock will, you know, will result to soil formation within the surface of that rock, and other plants can now grow on that little soil that is formed on the rock. So that is how they help in soil formation. We also have some bryophyta that have a kind of leaf-like structure made up of dead cells that can retain water. Mm? They have a leaf-like structure that has dead cells that can retain water, and with this, they help in okay, they help in increasing the water holding capacity of the soil. They help in increasing the water holding capacity of the soil because of that leaf-like structure, mm, in bryophyta that can retain large amount of water. And this can be found in the most important bryophyta. What I just said now, you can see that in the genus they call the sphagnum. The sphagnum. The sphagnum is the most economically important bryophyta. The most economically important bryophyta is known as the sphagnum or the peat moss. The sphagnum or the peat moss. The peat moss. Then bryophyta can also help in stuffing of ophostry. Stuffing of ophostry. They can also help in stuffing of ophostry. Your ophostries, if you check the content of your ophostries, most of those things you see inside of them, they are they are from bryophyta. Ophostry. Ophostry. So I think this is how we are going to where we're going to stop when it comes to the importance of bryophyta. The next thing I want to look at now is the classification of bryophyta. Minutes. Classification of bryophyta. Excuse me, don't know what is blocking this. Okay, so classification of bryophyta. Bryophyta can be classified into the following. We'll have the, what's it called again? Let's talk about the musci or the moss. This has two others. March and Chase and Junga Meneus. This March and Chase is made up of Lucia and Machansha. Then Junga Meneus is made up of Pelia and Perilla. This is the first class. The second class is called Anthocerati. We have Anthoceratids as the order. We now have Anthocerus as the example. So remember, these two, Riccia and Marchantia, are the examples of musci, are examples of Marchantius. Pelia and Porilla are examples of Jungameneus. So let me write this in this way so that you won't be confused. So here we have Riccia and Marchantia. Here we have Peria and Porilla. The last one is this is also called the horned liverwort. Horned liverwort. Then we have the last one, which is called the Hepaticae. Hepaticae or liverworts. Hepaticae or liverworts. So, under this one, which is the last one, Hepaticae. Hepaticae or liverworts. Hepaticae or liverworts. So, hepati means liver. You can also see it in the common name liverwort. So that means that this group of plants, have leaf-like structure that assumes the shape of a liver. And apart from assuming this, the horned liverwort, they also assume the shape of a liver. And in addition to that, they also have horn on their surface. They also have horns. And that presence of horns is the reason they are called the horned liverworts. And that's why in some textbook, they will just tell you that there are two classes of Bryophyta, the Hepaticae or liverworts and the Mosses or musci. Because the horned liverwort is still similar to the liverwort. The only difference is because is the presence of horn in them. That is what makes the difference. If not, they are typically the same. A minute. I hope you can see the board. Okay. You can see it. All right, so these ones have different orders, such as Sphagnus, this one has example as sphagnum, this one has example as andrica, this one has example as funaria, polytrichum, funaria, polytrichum. Okay, that is all about the classification of Bryophyta. I think that should be the last thing to talk about in Bryophyta is the reproduction. The reproduction. Is there another thing I'm forgetting? The reproduction in okay, I think that's just the only thing left for us to talk about. I don't want this video to be too long. So this explains the life cycle or reproduction in Bryophyta. But then before I go into this form of sexual reproduction, let me briefly talk about asexual reproduction. Even though it's not uh, as common as the sexual reproduction, but Bryophyta can still reproduce asexually through fragmentation. The body breaks into fragments, and each of these fragments fall on a good ground and they germinate into a new individual. And apart from that, they can also reproduce asexually through the formation of what they call germae, small tiny structures called germae that are formed within the germae cup. So through this method again, through formation of germae, they can reproduce asexually. But the most important form of reproduction is the sexual reproduction, and that is what we want to describe here. This is the most plants having the achegonium, which is the female sex organ, and the anterodium, which is the male sex organ. This achegonium produces only one egg, but the anterodium produces numerous sperms or anterozoids. However, it is just one of the many sperms that finally fertilizes the eggs. The others die off, do not participate in this process of fertilization. And once the two fuse together, they now form a zygote. The zygote immediately has a wall that covers it, and once it's covered by that wall, that zygote is now called the oospore. So from the oospore, it develops into the sporogonium, which is also called a sporophyte, and the sporophyte is now growing on top of the gametophyte bearing the capsule. I will still draw that. I will still draw the sporophytes and the gametophytes. You see how what it looks like bearing the capsule. And for the capsule, once the the capsule or the spores become mature, then there's a calyptra which covers the tip of the capsule that breaks. And once it breaks, then the capsule also dehisces and the spores are released. Now these are the spores. Then from spores we'll have a germinating spore which grows into the protonema, and the protonema grows into a full uh, bryophyta plant, a full plant, and that is how the cycle continues. But then it's important you know that the it's important you know that the inside of the what's it called again? The inside of the archegonium contains a chemical that's called the mucilage. The mucilage containing sugar too, sugar molecules. This mucilage is a kind of chemical that helps in attracting the sperm, and the sperm moves through the neck of archegonium and fertilizes the egg within the ventral region. And once the egg is fertilized, remember I said it is only one egg that will be fertilized because the archegonium at a point releases only one egg. Whereas we'll have many anterozoids or sperms, but it's still one that ends up fertilizing the, the egg. So this is known as the all these stages, all these stages are known as the gametophyte stage, the end stage, gametophytes. So one may ask you, or one may want to know what all the stages from the spore to gametes, because sperm and eggs are called gametes. So all the stages from the spore, all the stages from the spore to gametes are called gametophytes. Then all the stages from oospore to spore mother cell. So the spores are produced within the spore mother cells, and the spore mother cells, of course, are found embedded within the capsule. So all the stages from the spore to spore mother cell are called the sporophytes. The sporophytes. So let me use another drawing to explain this. a minute. Okay, so you can also see what I was explaining before here. This is what's the title? A mouse plant showing sporophytes growing on the gametophyte. Yes. So title: a mouse plant showing sporophytes growing on. So this is a mouse plant showing sporophytes growing on the gametophyte. So as you can see, this is a rhizoid, and these rhizoids are used by this plant to absorb nutrients from the soil. So it functions like the root, and this is the axis. That also functions like the stem. Then this is the leaf-like structure. So what you're seeing now from this leaf-like structure, axis and rhizoids, are the gametophyte. And like I said, the main plant itself is the gametophyte. So it's the gametophyte that has connection or link with the soil, not the sporophyte. And this is actually why we gave that explanation, or why I gave that explanation, that the sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte. So you can see that the sporophyte here, this is the foot of the sporophyte. So the root-like structure which the sporophyte uses to absorb nutrients, not from the soil now, but from the gametophyte. So it is the nutrients that the gametophyte has absorbed that the sporophyte will feed on or will depend on. And that is why that statement was clearly made, that the sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte. This structure explains that. And you can also watch the title of the structure: a moss plant showing sporophyte growing on the gametophyte. So what the sporophyte uses to absorb nutrients from the gametophyte is the foot, not the rhizoid. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying now. Then it has a stem-like structure, which is called a seta. Then, of course, it has a capsule. In fungi, what we called this capsule was a sporangium, the structure, the sac-like structure that houses the spores. But in the case of Bryophyta, it's called capsule. And like I said, at the tip of this capsule, we'll have a covering that is called a calyptra. So when this capsule dehisces, then the first thing that gets off or that breaks off is the calyptra, after which the spores will now be released. After which the spores will now be released. And once they are released, like I explained before, the germinating spore grows into the protonema and into a moss plant, and the cycle continues. So that is all about the life cycle in Bryophyta. This is the gametophyte, this is the sporophyte. I think this is where we are going to stop. Okay, also note that the achegonym is flask shaped. Flask shaped. That is for those writing exam. I think those of you writing exam, you can also note that the achegonym is flask shaped and has a multicellular body. It has a short stalk and consists of lower swollen portion called venter and the upper tubular structure known as the neck. And there's something I forgot to explain. The fact that the uh, the oospore divides into the lower, and the outer cells, the upper and the lower cells. The upper cells are the ones that form the capsule and the seta, and the lower cells are the ones that form the foot. Okay, this is just by the way. This is just by the way. So I don't think there's any other thing to point to. We have exhausted the most important aspect of this course. So I think I mentioned this. All the various stages from oospore to anterozoid and ovum represent the gametophytic or sexual generation. And all these stages have haploid number of chromosomes and what have you. Have haploid number of chromosomes. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this is where we'll stop. We are done with all the groups of lower plants. And whatever we're going to discuss next time will be to talk about the higher plants, pteridophyta and spermatophyta. So, once more, thank you. Share this video to as many that you know that will need it. See you once again in my next class. Thank you.